All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Partnership Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Today's guest is a certified international operator, someone who's helped build two iconic partner machines, first at Yotpo and now at Loop Returns. He's the man behind 1,000 agency deals, a global GTM engine, and one of the most respected names in the space. Today, I'm joined by John David Klausner, or JD, if you know him closely. This conversation is going to go deep, not just on partnerships, but on what it means to be a true operator in the new global AI-infused retention-obsessed world of SaaS. JD, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be on here.
Amazing. Well, look, we always kick things off with 5 quick-hitting questions, light, fun, but tailored for you. Just the first thing that comes to mind. You ready for that?
Let's rock and roll.
Sweet. All right, first question. What's harder, building a returns GTM function in Australia or selling diamonds in Shanghai? Because you're one of the few people who can say you've done both.
Yeah, it was technically in Beijing, but I'd say both scaling a go-to-market motion in Australia from the US and selling diamonds in China are both super fun. But the more challenging one, I'd say, was bootstrapping a diamond retail business in China, competing with mega brands. It goes without saying, like the language, cultural, political barriers. So yeah, love that.
Sweet. Next one for you is, what's one partner playbook that makes you roll your eyes every time you see it recycled?
Oof, coming in with the spice. There's a lot, actually, but the one that comes to mind is probably the concept of MDFs, like market development funds. It's like too much, and so they'll follow through and just really requires like proper program management and follow through for it to like really be meaningful, and it gets thrown around like very casually, and it just never really happens well.
Yeah, I co-sign with that. I think there's you're relying a lot on the marketing folks having firm insight into the strategy behind a partnership, and they have their own priorities, so it can be pretty messy. So
and let's be real, like every single marketing resource you've worked with is overworked, under-resourced. So it's, yeah.
Precisely. Sweet. A big theme of this conversation today is around kind of your international experience. You really do have a really great background. So this third question is, what's one non-obvious country where you've had the most underrated partner success?
Yeah, so in the context of like e-commerce SaaS, which is the industry I've been in for the last 10 years that, we've shared a lot of, our paths have crossed quite a bit. I'd probably say the Netherlands, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Quite like on the global level, understated, but it's got the mainland European culture, but really kind of Anglo work ethic and like business practices. So yeah, I really enjoy working with the Dutch. And yeah, like you feel it when you're engaged with them, especially compared to, I'm not going to name specific countries, but compared to other countries in Europe, they stand out.
Amazing. Well, if anyone listening, you're looking for your next big country in Europe to expand into, you've got a good candidate for yourself. Sweet. Next question is, what's something from your music background that still shows you up in how you lead and operate?
Yeah, it's all about the vibe, baby. It sounds really cheesy, but just really manifest the energy you want to receive, and like people will unintentionally mirror it. And like music is all about energy. It's like the intangible, and I think it's all about the vibe.
Well, you're the ultimate vibe guy for anyone who's had the pleasure of interacting with you in person. So I think you would really say that. Last question for you, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. What's a work habit or philosophy you stole from your time in Asia or Israel that North Americans don't seem to get?
Well, it sounds cheesy, but it's all about the relationships, like the people you trust. It's not what you know, who you know, and it's just insane how far that'll get you in terms of like helping you navigate the tough times, what doors to walk through, what doors to walk out of. So both those cultures really have strong index on like the importance of relationships for sure.
Love it. Cool. Well, we're warmed up now. So let's get into the fun stuff and rewind the clocks a bit. And you've been called the most international person I know, and for good reason, right? Beijing, London, Miami, but it all started in Tel Aviv, where you're basically the first partner hire at Yotpo, working wild hours, trying to support partners across 3 continents. So I want to start there. Can you walk us through how you even got into this game and why that early stretch was so defining for you? In your own words, the most thrilling part of your career.
Yeah, so this was after my China stretch. I did my MBA in Tel Aviv. After that, I tried to launch my own startup, fucked it up. Great experience in terms of learning all the mistakes early on when my risk tolerance was super high. And back then, this was in 2015, 2016, started hearing about this reviews company, and it was raising a big funding. They just raised the Series B. And I was like, all right, I got to get a proper job. And I didn't even know about partnerships. I knew I liked commercial roles, but I'd never really done sales. I'd never really worked in SaaS, to be honest. And I was introduced by a friend who was the first ever CSM there, and Dov Kaufman, who was kind of the OG veteran at Yotpo, known and loved by many. He'd been trying to hire his the first partner person there for a long time, and basically the company was really at a fun stage where e-commerce was just, or the Shopify ecosystem was just riding an insane wave of growth. Put your hat on 2015, 2016. It was just like the excitement, the investment. Every app company was raising huge rounds. And the company, Yotpo, was experiencing massive growth as well. So it was based out of Tel Aviv, but scaling the go-to-market motion in the US. And the first ever partner hire was just kind of experimental. Like Dov had established some very early relationships with agencies and tech partners. So he really identified that there were signals that this could be like a repeatable and productizable motion. It was a really intense interview process. Actually, the interview process is what gave me a feel for what the experience was going to be like. And if there's one way to summarize it, is that it was just outsized ambition for, the team and the budgets we had. And that was super exciting. Basically just, David versus Goliath, trying to, punch way above our weight in terms of execution, goals. And so there was just this sense of excitement, a note, and adrenaline. And working out of Tel Aviv, supporting the US, supporting the UK, supporting Australia, it was working all types of funky business hours, working with honestly the sharpest and coolest, nicest people in the world. And, being at 11:30 p.m., banging beers, doing demos, catching Australia, then waking up early to do the UK. So it was just all over the place, but it was thrilling.
I love that. Well, it's and you can see the energy and how you just kind of recount your experience, even though it was over a decade ago. But I want to stay here because I don't think most people understand just how unglamorous those early partner motion days are, right? So when Dove brought you in, no systems, no budget, just scattered agency intros. So if you can remember, right, not to date yourself, but what were those first few months like, right? How did you actually start turning noise into signal to really substantiate further investment and scaling of the team?
Yeah, I'd say first on a deeply more personal level, growing up, I'm not going to go down this whole rabbit hole, but I was a really bad student, and the feeling of failing was the biggest motivator for me. I just wanted to avoid that feeling at all costs.
Right.
So frankly, just not only working the hardest possible, but the smartest possible, and doing anything possible to make sure this doesn't become a failure. So that innately gave me my own skin in the game. And on a more tactical level, really just starting small. Basically, the concept of land and expand, where you have maybe 2-3 relationships out there in the world that are somewhat willing to help you, that are somewhat trusting you with their time, and really letting them help you navigate their world. So if it's an agency person, just be generous with your curiosity and your help, and really help them help you in terms of guiding you through their world, what's important to them. And then as you start getting seeing patterns, tidbits of what's actually resonating, what's important to them, then testing it out on new partners. And then once you start seeing traction, productizing it. So, it depends on your context, right? This was e-commerce SaaS for a reviews product, leveraging data in the right way in terms of the impact that reviews have for agencies and their clients. And not just making assumptions, always challenging your own assumptions and letting these people really letting them pull you into their world, and just being open, just a consultative, person. I just want to deliver value. How can I do that? What's important to you? And that's it. Starting small.
Got it. It sounds like humble beginnings, but ultimately just brute force to get things going. And I know in our prep, you talked about how one of the biggest rookie mistakes was over-optimizing for rev share, right? And given that agencies were such an important part of your early foundation and building the iconic Yotpo program, curious, was there a specific moment that smacked you in the face that said, okay, we're getting some sporadic success, but it's certainly not scalable if we're really just indexing on a vehicle rev share. So can you remember an inflection point where you're really able to start to scale the agency program by using more value-led instruments?
Definitely. I think it's easier and funner to rise to the top than to defend your position. And the big inflection point was when e-commerce was exploding, but that means there was way more players in the scene, way more competition, which means we couldn't get away with the same old cookie cutter BS, essentially. And so we were challenged by, okay, there's competition. That's number one. Number two, we acquired another company, which meant we all of a sudden became a multi-product company. And how do you get partners incentivized and engaged? And I always think of partners as an extension of your own team, right? Like, how are they enabled, incentivized, engaged, motivated to like advocate for your product, implement your product? And so that really, like the forcing function of being multiple products in a very competitive environment just meant that, okay, you can't, the status quo is just not going to suffice, and you really have to try and be 3 steps ahead of, your partner's needs and what's this going to look like 12 months from now, and what investments do we have to make today to enable that.
Got it. Really great insights. And I'll just want to take a step aside to ask a follow-up question around the multi-product piece, because especially nowadays, so many of the SaaS companies, not just in e-com, but any other industry vertical you can think of, are obviously becoming multi-product in pursuit of becoming a bona fide platform. So can you peel back the curtain and help us understand some of the bigger challenges, as candid as you can be, with respect to your partner program when you do become multi-product? Because yes, it's exciting and it's more things for your partners to sell and make money from. But from an enablement perspective and a marketing perspective, you're adding that additional dimensions, which causes a cognitive strain. But then also you might be launching products that start to make yourself competitive with once previously strong partners. So as honest as you can be, what was the challenge like as Yotpo pretty aggressively expanded its product suite? What was that dynamic like from a partnering perspective?
As unglamorous as it sounds, it's kind of like fake it till you make it. Meaning, if your whole go-to-market team is like has deep expertise in selling this one product category, and all of a sudden you're entering this brand new category where you're competing with incumbents that have been there for the last 10 years, and your sales reps have never sold an SMS product or like some kind of like a usage-based product. How do you all of a sudden show up overnight like you're supposed to be this expert when you don't have this like institutional knowledge internally? The product, like, let's be real, acquisitions, they sound great, but it takes years for those products to actually be harmonious and synergistic and all the big words that you use on your product marketing collateral. So I think it's the fake it till you make it, but really lean into the gaps as quickly as possible. And again, like, incentives matter. So employees, partner managers, sales reps, they're always going to go for the path of least resistance. And very quickly, if you're not able to hit quota until X percentage of your pipeline or won deals are included of this new product, or like are inclusive of this new product, you're always going to sell the product you're most comfortable with.
Exactly.
So the forcing function of making that multi-product motion not just like a spiff or a nice to have, but like you're not hitting your goal until there's multi-product adoption in your pipeline or in your won deals. That forces a lot more attention and a lot more investment in enablement and external enablement and marketing and like making sure that you actually know what the hell you're doing. And it's ugly, it's hard. And there's like tactical ways to do this where you have like an overlay, for example, like if you're in the Yotpo context, you're selling reviews, and then you go into SMS, you have one expert whose only role, it's kind of like in the arc, like in a transitional phase of everyone selling that product, you have one expert who gets pulled into different deals. But there's many tactics to go about it, but it's a forcing function, and it's intense for sure.
Well, I'm really glad I asked that, because I know for sure a lot of our audience is going to be at companies where they are going multi-product, and so this is a really great blueprint. Now let's fast forward a couple of years later. From the early days, now Yotpo's ecosystem is massive, 1,000+ agencies, 250+ tech partners, driving 30% of net new revenue. Curious, if you can speak candidly as a leader, right? That's awesome, and you're getting a lot of recognition. You and your team are crushing it, but that's probably a lot of pressure as well, right? To like maintain what is a really productive engine that's only getting more complex. So the next question for you is, how do you keep that engine from collapsing under its own weight and still keep growing, right, as things become more complex and expectations rise?
So you asking this to the lens of partnerships or go-to-market in general?
Yeah, I mean, within your remit, right, particularly partnerships. So the partner program is starting to become one of the best in class within e-com at Yotpo under your supervision. So just how do you keep that going? And what was it like, in the later days where you were a bona fide program, like you were a legitimate GTM function within Yotpo? What is the pressure like as a leader and kind of maintaining and scaling that?
Yeah, I think, okay, so it's a good question. Where my mind goes to is, how businesses create like a moat, the ecosystem, like the defensible moat. You need to create a moat around yourself as a leader. and really identify like what are the functions that you need, like your internal allies that can really help you scale this up. And so in the context of partnerships, it's like, all right, I know that we can't scale this up. We can't add hundreds more partners, more partner managers until we have RevOps or dedicated partnerships RevOps function. Partner marketing, same thing. If you don't have a good ally on the marketing team, it doesn't matter if they report into you or the marketing team or vice versa, but if you don't have like a dedicated individual or team supporting you, it's just impossible. You can't do it alone, and you'll just get crushed by the goals to increase quarter over quarter, whether you like it or not. If you're doing well, the goals are going to keep increasing. And so knowing the kind of patterns of success, like every time we had a great quarter, I would always kind of fear, okay, shit, what does this mean for the next quarter? But it also means more resources and productizing yourself. And it was a huge turning point for me personally as a leader to realize that like, it's not, I'm here to kind of set the North Star, but I'm here to make sure we have the right resources supporting this function and delegating and empowering your colleagues to like really be a part of this journey with you.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of resources, it's not just monetary and dollars in the bank account that you can deploy. It's also alignment internally, which you spoke to. So that was my next question. As you scale and you have more and more ambitious and aggressive goals, you certainly need more reliance and cross-functional collaboration with marketing, sales, CS, product, etc. So as you were stepping up in your leadership career, how did you personally get those teams to first take partnerships seriously and then ultimately be a true ally as you started to scale the program to the next level?
Yeah, I think of it as like being a politician almost, like
Lobbying.
Lobbying, exactly. And honestly, it kind of starts top down. Like if your CEO and executive leadership team is not bought in, like why the hell would individual contributors on different functions be bought in? Not that you should hide behind your CEO and let your CEO do like the selling internally, but when there's like an internal acceptance that like the leadership team is not just accepting partnerships, but like leaning in and is truly investing in this function, it really then becomes a function of, like you said, lobbying. So it's like constant value selling. Like I always, basically my mantra is, if you're part of a high growth company and you're leading a function like partnerships, which is so dependent cross functionally, at least 20% of your time has to be like sharing updates with other teams. How do you keep them engaged? How do you reinforce the value on the impact on win rates, retention rates? And like you're on a mission to like make it impossible to ignore, like out of sight, out of mind, right? Whether it's automated notifications, monthly email recaps, blah, 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 but like also inviting your, CS peer or sales peer into your partner team meetings and vice versa. Like it's an ongoing, I don't want to say battle, but ongoing need to constantly enable the teams.
It can feel like a battle, having lived that experience, certainly. And I think that's a great recap. My next question is related to that, which is if you could think of a specific function or department that was both, most important to like really be dialed in with leader to leader, but also perhaps the most challenging, right? For me, it's always been sales, right? It always perplexes me that we have literally the exact same quota comp model. It's like close one, revenue hitting the bank account, yet it's seemingly so difficult to get sales bought in. Just curious from your vantage point, like was there a specific department where it's like, they're so important to us and our success, but my goodness, like it's seemingly, consistently an uphill battle that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the team that gets the least amount of love and the most amount of shit. It's the CS team.
Fair.
That honestly, like I have so much empathy and respect for them because they open their laptops every morning and it's a constant barrage of fires to put out. Yet as a partner person, if you have like the CS team, MS team, whatever you call it, like really behind you and advocating for partners on QBRs and getting intel, like you have the best partner program, game changer. You know that better than anyone. Like so, I'd say that the hardest team to crack is truly the CS team because they're always overworked, under-resourced, constant burnout, constant like change. Also, as you go multi-product, these CSMs have to like really understand like So it's I'd say like that's the hardest nut to crack internally. And if you can even get like 10% of their attention here and there, it's like a huge win.
Yeah, I think CS is a great answer. And also amongst the challenges is you have totally different comp and KPI models, right? Like with AEs, at least, you're at least kind of incentivized on the exact same thing. So you got to squint and kind of force the picture with CS. So I think that's a really good answer. Let's continue your journey at Yotpo as you kind of scale things and talk more about platform GTM. So at some point you moved from just managing partners to actually influencing the entire GTM model. So when Yotpo started launching loyalty and SMS, you weren't just tacking on partners at the end. You really pulled them into the launch motion. And having a firsthand view of this while you were doing this, I really enjoyed watching that. So what did it actually look like inside the building phase? To expand on an earlier conversation, what was it like as Yotpo became multi-product to really inform your strategy and ultimately how you executed against it?
Yeah, so some products are more relevant to the partner world than others. It's really hard, if you think about reviews, okay? Like it's hard to get e-commerce agencies excited about reviews. It's like a nice, plug in when you build a website. It's important, but it's not like mission critical. If you're like a BPO and your help desk solutions, like your world where you work, Chris, that's like a totally different dynamic. Or you're an email marketing agency and you're engaging with an ESP, that dynamic is very different. So I think like really understanding from your suite of products, which ones like really matter, like actually matter to partners versus less. And then it's kind of the 80-20 rule. Like how are 20% of your partners gonna make 20% of your partners that have like 80% of the impact? Like how do you really make them a core part of that journey, whether it's product feedback, positioning, launch, like marketing through them and their audience. And you know this also, Chris, working with platforms. Like if you're able to get a much bigger platform, like a platform that you're dependent on, but that is very important to your customers. Like if you can get them bought into your company, your vision, whether it's through an investment, whether it's through strategic partnership, a strategic integration, the tailwinds and just like the arms and reach of that can be like significant. So in our context, having Shopify engaged in any kind of product launch can really have a dramatic impact.
Amazing. And thanks for sharing that story. And then I'm curious from a staffing and kind of headcount resourcing perspective, what was the challenge like as things really started to pop off and you're in full-fledged scale mode? And now you need to start hiring an additional wave of, say, partner managers and ancillary roles. Well, now the ideal rep profile you're looking for is totally different. When Yotpo is just a single use case, reviews, very straightforward rep profile, but that rep profile is now evolving, right? More enterprise, multi-product, et cetera. So kind of from a headcount hiring perspective, what was that challenge like as things scaled and you needed to get the right profile, so to speak, in place?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. To kind of connect it to your prior question of like which team was the hardest to crack, like the CS team, which was my answer. At some point in the evolution or like in the journey of your partner program, you're gonna like have to showcase value pretty quickly, like product value, product impact. If you're doing like managed services, where agencies are building services on top of your platform, you can't just have partner sales reps constantly banging on their door for new leads. You need product experts that are showing them under the hood, like this is the impact, this is the amount of money we helped your client save, this is the amount of money we helped you generate, we helped your clients generate. You basically have two types of partner managers. You have like the partner hunter, and then the partner and farmer, nurturer, whatever you want to call it. And it's really hard to justify the partner nurturer, the partner farmer, whatever you want to call it, the partner account manager. You usually see these roles when it's like Klaviyo style, like public listed businesses that are like 50-person partner teams. Up until that point, every headcount you have needs to contribute to like direct correlation of pipeline growth and one ACV. And it's a little bit of like a chicken and egg. Like if you want your partners to take you seriously, you can't just be constantly talking about like new business opportunities. You have to really push the value. And I'd say like that one role, we've tried it and tested it in so many different formats and it never worked. Because either that person wasn't embedded in the CS org, and so they didn't have a seat at the table, they weren't plugged into their processes, or that person was on the CS team, but they kept getting pulled into CS stuff and couldn't really invest that like time to help you and your partners. So that's like one role, for example, that like was always super hard to figure out like at what point. And it was always ended up being like your back's against the wall, your goals go up. This is a nice to have role all of a sudden. It's not like must have because you're always going to focus on like new business because that's what's going to get you to hit your goal.
Love that. And we'll dive into that a bit more in the next segment, which we're going to shift gears now and talk about your current post at Loop Returns. And we're also going to talk a little bit about international GTM. So for Loop Returns, you came in to run biz dev. right? But ultimately, you had this international experiment, so to speak, that you started. That's now a full-fledged business unit. You've now shifted roles into more of a global GM type position, and that's driving real AR and expanding Loop's global footprint. So I'm curious, what made you think there was a real opportunity here, and how did you make that kind of come to fruition within the leadership circles?
Yeah. Well, fun fact between you and I, Chris, is our journey. We've had many lives together. We were industry peers, competitors in your last role.
Yeah.
And I can tell anyone here who listens to this, Chris is not a fun competitor to have. He's a great guy, but he's a savage competitor in a good way. So I think but no joke, like the dynamic of like the competitive nature of this industry. If you're lucky, you don't have Chris on the other side battling you. But either way, when I joined Loop, it was an exciting transition going from, Yotpo, the whole, arc of like an 8-year journey from single product, multi-product, like 1,000 employees, the whole spiel, to going back to a Series B business, one product, domestic only in the US. And really like the big aha moment was, okay, we're Shopify only. Loop Returns is like a returns management platform exclusively so far working with Shopify brands. And the big light bulb moment was, all right, Shopify's earning reports are coming out every quarter, and every quarter, the GMV growth, like the proportion of their overall growth is more and more derived from their international success. 50% of Shopify's GMV is from outside North America. And then, why the hell are we not there? Our product works in those markets, kind of. Well, it depends where, but like for the most part, it works in those markets. We know how to sell to brands on that platform. And yet we had never invested $1, zero, in acquiring customers there, showing up at events, like nothing. And it was always very opportunistic. We had no idea really how to sell and how to support in those different time zones and the cultural nuances. So I really very quickly was banging that drum in terms of, okay, this is like the lowest hanging fruit for us to expand our TAM, or total addressable market. And so it was a side project where I think having experience as a partner leader is such a competitive advantage in expanding internationally. It all depends on the industry and stuff like that. But in e-commerce, if you're going to expand in the UK, European markets, or Australia, these are such partner-centric, community-centric ecosystems that it's such an advantage to understand how the partner network works and how to build advocacy and generate awareness through partners. And so it all started with kind of an extension of my original role by hiring 2 partner managers on the ground in the UK. And then from there, very quickly scaling up the different functions where we realized, okay, this has so much more opportunity and this requires so much more attention. How do we really accelerate and double down? And so that's when my role transitioned into this full-time GM model.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think it's really inspiring for a lot of folks who are kind of maybe mid-stage career looking to kind of break into more senior leadership roles. The next question for you is, what advice would you give to anyone who's looking to follow in that footsteps, where it's like, hey, look, I'm in a current role right now, but I think there's a bigger opportunity where I could potentially pivot my role if I can prove it out on a small experiment sense and not ultimately get into a role that is capitalizing on low-hanging fruit to expand our TAM and is a role ultimately I'm more excited about. I think there's so many people who feel stuck in their role, and the only way to go up is just to get promoted in that same track. But it's a lesser known thing to like maybe take a step to the side and get onto a different role track within your own company. So, what's your TLDR advice you'd give to anyone who maybe is sensing an opportunity for the company and they feel like they're the right person to execute against it, but perhaps are just suffering from imposter syndrome to pull the trigger?
Definitely. So first of all, there's no right answer here. There's a million ways to go about this. I really think it also depends on what your ambition and professional aspirations are. I stumbled into partnerships. I really enjoyed it, but I kind of got partnerships fatigue in terms of it just felt quite repetitive. And I think for me, the most gratifying part of the whole partner journey was really learning to be a leader. It's a huge shift from being a killer IC partner manager to being an amazing leader. And you only learn, it's like if you want to, it sounds cheesy, but you want to be a dad, you don't learn to be a dad, you learn to be a dad by being a dad, right? And so it's the same thing with leadership, where the biggest move you can make is learning the skills required to become a leader, a true tested leader. And that skill is so transferable. Identifying talent, nurturing talent, organizational design, cross-functional politics, making hard decisions. Like, of course, there's like a craft to CS and a craft to sales, but 80% of it is like leadership skills and really adapting to the context of like the problems you're trying to solve. So for me, partnerships was kind of like the springboard into these different levels. And I don't want to like down talk partnerships because deep in my soul, I'm always going to be a partner guy. But I didn't like that partnerships in the pecking order of like SaaS functions was always kind of like the last afterthought where it's like, it's always going to be sales, CS, and then product engineering, of course. And partnerships is always this like, great, we expect partnerships to deliver, but when they don't, like, we have other bigger problems to sort out. And so I really wanted to break away from that, essentially like functional limitation. But again, like you could go and be a partner leader in like a much bigger company like Amazon or Meta, like that's a whole other ballgame. And like, you could still pursue that career. But for me, I wanted to really constantly be out of my comfort zone and lead different functions. I'm still passionate about partnerships, but it doesn't define me in terms of like my entire career. And I just wanted to be pushed out of my comfort zone and learn to lead different functions. And this international expansion became like a really organic extension to my previous role. Now I'm rambling. I forgot your question to begin with.
You're good. That was a great answer. And we appreciate the honest account on the advice for anyone who's looking to kind of, create kind of somewhat of a net new role within the org to capitalize on an opportunity. So
if I had to summarize it, basically just always take on more than you think you can do. Always find something better, leave something better than how you found it, and just push yourself to like, do more. If you're comfortable, it's the death of progress.
It's underrated advice to like do more than your job description says. That is the fastest way to learn, make an impact, make more money, and get promoted and get noticed. Like full stop. If you're only doing what's asked of you in your job description, to be honest, you're not going to keep up in this environment. But let's now talk about how you actually are executing this role. Now you've been in the role now, your current position for a few quarters. So curious, what have you ultimately learned now as this Mr. International GTM operator, right? Like what is the playbook? If I hand you a brand new market tomorrow, you got zero presence, zero team. What does your first few weeks look like?
Well, that sounds so mysterious and epic, Mr. International GTM operator.
That's
First of all, if you're married, make sure your husband or wife are aligned with the lifestyle implications of running international teams.
Good tip.
They always say like, if you're going international, you think it's a promotion, but it's actually like the biggest quality of life killer ever because you're just constantly online, constantly connected. But on a much like more positive note, in our context, when we decided to like formally expand internationally, we had like a really small customer base in the UK, a decently sized customer base in Australia, and honestly, kind of the same playbook, quote unquote, as when I started out in partnerships. Just go on like a listening mission. Like, what are the product gaps? Like, I'm on a mission to get feedback from these customers. What are those gaps? How quickly or how rapidly can we close those gaps? Now, same thing. Like, it's not just like building a partner program. It's not an overnight process. It takes time. And like, you need to build champions within the market that can really advocate for you. So it's like the same thing as the partner initial, like when we're talking about Dob and Tel Aviv and Yotpo, like who are the couple people that are in the market like you enough where they're willing to go to bat, they're willing to advocate, they're willing to give you feedback and willing to be that like that torch or lighthouse in the like where it's dark and murky, like you're not really sure whether it's customers or partners for that matter. And then internally again bring people along on the journey. Like you can't do this by yourself. So really like, okay, who is excited about this internally? Great. Some product marketing guy has been really passionate about this. Amazing. Whether he likes it or not, unofficially, he's part of this. And how do I give him accountability to have projects and share updates and then, recognize that person for the great work they're doing. And it's like, again, the whole internal, like rallying people behind your cause, internal politician lobbying, as you say. It's very, very similar to building a partner program. It's like cross-functionally so dependent. So kind of a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's a really clear framework for anyone listening who might be tasked with kind of leading international expansion. Like, have a really strong hypothesis and an initial signal, and then you got to work your tail off. Ultimately, talking to as many customers as you can and potential customers. I think that's an underrated element. And then, it's all about just following the signals as they emerge. Now, I want to keep on that same track on international GTM structure and discipline, because most U.S. SaaS teams are still treating international expansion like time zone math is how I would kind of frame it. So the next question for you is, what are the real costs of failing to localize your ecosystem strategy, and where do you see that mistake happening most?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two pretty stark differences. There's like product and go to market. Some companies or like categories are very lucky where the product doesn't need like a huge facelift in terms of integrations, data. Some countries, GDPR, Europe, like if you're in MarTech, like for the most part, if you're GDPR compliant, like your US products will be relatively compatible for Europe. In the case of Loop, it's like we're super dependent on like shipping integrations and carriers, like logistics partners, and like that whole landscape was super different. So the bigger challenge was the product lift needed to have like decent product market fit, where we're not just faking it till we make it, but we're actually like, because at the end of the day, the way it works with product, like product will build when the money is there. And so you need to generate the demand, the interest, and even like the one ACV before product can commit the resources. So there's like this friction point of like 6 to potentially 18 months where like, you're punching above your weight, you're bringing these customers, you're not fully, like your product market fit isn't like 100% there, but like the product team is like, the engines are revving now for the product team to like support that because there's momentum. And then on the go-to-market side, honestly, it's a lot easier. It's again, so if you have control of the sales team, or like identifying who's excited about it, and frankly, just trying to isolate trying to isolate the motion to as few people as possible. If you're distributing this international effort to like 20 different reps, again, path of least resistance. AEs are gonna go on calls and close the deals that are like easiest to work on. Like, and it's natural, it's human behavior. But so you need either people that are like genuinely motivated about this and like really enjoy working with international merchants and love the idea of maybe flying into the market, one of these days, and like isolating the function to like as few of these people as possible. They're willing to take calls at 5 a.m. or at 10 p.m. or whatever that is. Yeah, if I can recommend something, it's like really trying to like concentrate the effort to as few cooks in the kitchen as possible.
Really great breakdown. And then the follow-up, and this will be the last question on the international piece, is, you've now led GTM plays in US, Israel, Asia, UK, Europe, Australia, Tel Aviv, etc. My next question is, how do you structure governance so that the local teams actually have the room and agency to execute without blowing up global consistency, right? And maintaining that. So how do you actually do that as a single person kind of leading these global teams? How do you kind of maintain global best practices for Loop as an organization, whilst also trying to create cohesion and individual setups for these regions?
Yeah, it's like a really great question with no one answer. But if I had to, basically making it culturally not accepted, but expected that failure is a part of the process, and like not to incentivize failure, but to incentivize experimentation, risk, and iteration. And like making sure that those learnings are shared and acted on like super quickly.
Right.
Because if there's like a fear of failure, we have to comply with the US process, and like not that you want to go and like break your funnel and your pipeline process, not at all. But like things are going to be different in the UK, in different markets. The buyer persona is going to be different. Their expectations are going to be different. Like, break things a little bit and experiment, but like share those learnings super quickly, and let's make sure we don't make the same mistakes. And that's honestly been like the transformational way to like empower them and make them feel subconsciously, they feel like a real stakeholder when like you give them, they're in the driver's seat, not in the passenger seat of figuring out this motion.
Yeah, huge fan of empowering people to have basically like equity in the process of building something. I mean, we all have equity at most of these companies, but giving them equity and kind of building something so that they can get a lot of the credit as well as it becomes successful. So thanks for that big rundown on the international side. Now let's finish on the last topic, which is the future of GTM, AI, ecosystem, and product-led growth. So everyone's talking AI, everyone's talking ecosystems, and everyone right now is trying to bolt on a PLG motion. So my succinct question for you next is, what's actually next in GTM, and what are you seeing the most that teams still don't see right now?
Honestly, who the hell knows?
Love that.
I feel like
that's refreshing.
Yeah, but seriously, I think the facts are like the known knowns are like the known unknowns are like no one really knows where like I think AI is undeniably like transforming everything. I don't believe that the need to have like a human sell your product or support your product is going to be completely eradicated. Like certain products are complex scenarios, context, like, and at the end of the day, like when, especially in the enterprise, software buyers and users, like they want the connection. Like they will go to your VIP event if it's in like a, in their area. Like they want to engage, they want to understand, they want to learn about your roadmap, how you're thinking about things, like the culture of your business. So I don't think go-to-market teams are going to be eradicated, but the known knowns are like efficiency per rep has to improve. Like you can't, keep the same playbooks on SDR outreach, on content marketing, on A/B. Like you have to be just ruthlessly efficient. And again, experimentation. Like I really don't think anybody truly knows, and no one's like really validated like the AI go-to-market motion. But I think just knowing that it's going to change, being patient, and just being realistic with your expectations that like you're not going to have 300% overnight efficiency per rep, that it's going to take time for like the culture, like the business culture, your company culture, and your processes to adapt around that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a refreshing answer that I definitely appreciate, where you're not just kind of trying to just, blow smoke, so to speak. I appreciate the knowing the unknown is a real thing. Last question on the AI piece that I've asked a few guests is, I'm curious, how is it being communicated internally, perhaps, downwards, starting with Hannah, Loop's CEO, around the expectation to be leveraging AI tools to basically supercharge your productivity? And I'll preface that by saying, I think we've all seen Toby Luca, Shopify CEO's famous memo that got leaked, and then he leaked it himself, where he's basically like, hey, look, if you don't get in line and start leaning into AI, you're going to just fall behind and ultimately get left behind. So he's making it very clear what the expectations are. So I'm just curious, where is Loop at in its life cycle of okay, we're really going to lean into AI and we're going to expect you to do that, and there's going to be huge upside if you do, and if you don't, well then there's some circumstances that could arise. So just curious what that narrative looks like today within Loop.
When I think about this, and like if a CEO has like a big sweeping mandate, it has to be supported top down as well. Meaning like you can't expect every employee to go and figure out their own AI tools and integrate. It's like there needs. It's like you could think of it as like digital transformation for like these legacy businesses that we're trying to it's like AI transformation, and that needs to happen with some level of governance, guidance. You can't just expect 300 employees to just figure it out. So you need like a team, a task force dedicated to like solving these problems and helping chaperone or like be the Sherpa. Actually, that's the word. Like through this like transformational period. At Loop specifically, I think it's primarily like very much communicated and like it being adapted on like the engineering side, where like the tools, the efficiency per like engineer, like that is like properly being implemented. There's a whole team in place, like making sure that transformation happens. On the go-to-market side, not as much yet. Frankly, I think you need to be in a really stable spot in terms of like your RevOps and your systems and your tools and how they interact. And like we just did this huge like migration from our CRM from HubSpot to Salesforce. Anybody who's gone through that, that's like the biggest pain. Brutal. It takes a long time. And so like we still like we've stabilized, but then we acquired Wonderman, another company, and now we're multi-product. There's still a lot of like CRM systems chaos. And yeah, like we want to be AI first and yada, 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 but like it's really hard to make any dramatic changes until you have like a really strong internal and stable internal team on like the systems and the CRM, that kind of stuff.
That's a really great answer. And any bona fide leader with clout at their company, I think there's two great takeaways from what JD just said there is A, that's really important when you're going to mandate something as serious as this. Like you have to be prepared, having the task force. How do you actually measure if this thing's working? How do you drive accountability, et cetera? And then the second piece I love there is, hey, your systems need to be in place, right? You can't just bolt on AI onto, systems that already have gaping holes in them and expect things to magically be fixed. So I appreciate kind of how you broke that down.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of the core tools you use are leveling up, with AI.
Of course.
Like if you use Gong, so like just that's the lowest hanging fruit is making sure you're capitalizing on these tools. But yeah,
fair enough. Cool. Well, last set of questions, last two, just to get us out, is on leadership philosophy and personal kind of operating systems. So you said your entire philosophy, business, career, life, comes down to giving before you take, right? You told me that in our prep. So I'm just curious, where did that belief get forged, and how do you actually lead that way day to day?
Yeah, actually, like if I have to think about where it came from, like maybe being like a middle child growing up, like you don't realize like the role of like what the nature versus nurture. Like being the middle child, like you always have to like get attention in like non-obnoxious ways. And it's like sounds really like kind of like dumb, but like I'm just really like professionally, it's the same thing. Like no one owes you anything. No one really cares. People just care about themselves. And like, how do you really like to get someone to like move mountains for you? Not even mountains, like to help you. Like what's in it for them? And like why? Like so, just operating on the assumption that no one owes you anything. And how do you peel off the layers where they genuinely feel some level of connection and motivation to help you with whatever you're doing. And to do that, honestly, it's like you need to deliver value. And to deliver value, you need to understand like who's your audience, what's this person, like what motivates this individual, how can I help this person, how can I, whether it's bringing good vibes or whether it's someone's hiring, I'm going to refer some candidates, or someone looking to navigate their career move. Like I'm willing to invest my energy and my curiosity and just my genuine care to like understand this person, get to know this person. And so yeah, like I know I'm a really chatty guy in this context, but most times like when I'm having conversations, like I'm the one asking questions, I'm the one trying to really learn and understand like who is this person behind this, and how, like what do they care about, and what role can I play in helping them in their journey. And then after that, like in a it's going to sound crude and opportunistic, but like once you've done that, like it's a level playing field. And I personally just feel I never feel comfortable asking for things before I feel like I've, invested enough energy in helping this person feel like I actually genuinely do care and want to help them.
I think I appreciate the vulnerable recount on that. I think it's a really difficult skill to develop, even if you are a naturally good empathetic person, because early in your career, you're so desperate to hit your own goals and quotas. It's natural to just push and be asking for things. But I think as you kind of scale in your career and you kind of learn the hard way, so to speak, I think it softens you up a bit. You're like, you know what, I got to zoom out a bit. And I've had way more success in my career when I've been delivering value first, earning the right to then ask for something in return. But I can understand at earlier stages in your career, it can be easy and tempting to just ask because it's your monthly or quarterly quota on the line and you're trying to keep your job. So I think it's hearing from someone, respectable like yourself. I think it's encouraging for folks to be like, you know what, okay, that is the only way forward, is to give first to earn the right to ask for reciprocity.
Totally. And I think constantly pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is the most humbling thing you could do. Talk about imposter syndrome. Like if you feel like you're the dumbest person in the room, like you're in the right circles, whatever that expression is, like,
yeah.
Like you're not going to come guns blazing, making demands and requests if you feel like imposter syndrome. So like if you're feeling imposter syndrome, like you're doing the right thing to push yourself constantly, like out of your comfort zone.
100%. I always say like if I'm a little bit scared shitless about something that's coming, it's a good thing because it means it's important to me and it's something that I want to get right. So look, that wraps this up. This really was a masterclass. Such great tactics, real perspectives, and just real humility. So really appreciate you coming on, JD.
Chris, thank you. And honestly, like I've learned more than you can imagine from you, not only as a peer, but as a competitor as well. So very excited for you to continue on this journey.
Amazing. Well, cool. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you enjoy what you heard today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a quick review. But until next time, thank you so much.